Hey there, check mic, check. Hiya guys, welcome to my Compound Life. I am Jonathan. This is a channel where we build assets, we build habits, and of course we build freedom. That will be financial freedom, time freedom for you, me, and anyone else that watches my videos. So if you're new here, do hit the like and hit subscribe because I make Bitcoin video almost on a daily basis. So I don't think you want to miss that out. Before we get started, quick disclaimer. This is not financial or investment advice. I'm not a licensed advisor. Everything here is for education and entertainment only. Okay, so let's get started. So this is a Bitcoin daily video. As of time of recording, it's the 10th of February 2026. Let's start with some price action right now for Bitcoin. Right now, Bitcoin is trading around $69,000. Well, it's $69,119. So it's trading between the range of 69,000 to about 70,000 in the past 24 hours. It went down a small 2% or so. I think, as you can see, in terms of volumes, it's pretty weak right now for Bitcoin. So starting from around 71,000, hitting a high near 71,000 actually, and low around 68,900. We are, however, still about 45% away from the previous all-time high back in October the 8th. That was around $126,000. So Bitcoin has been bouncing back a bit after a rough drop. So remind you, this was a pretty rough drop. Below 60,000 briefly. Right now, it's testing some old resistance. As you can see here, these are some of the old resistance level. This is actually, we're back to 2024. Back in 2024, we have been on this side chops for quite some time. As early as March onto about November 2024, guys. Okay, so I think some old resistance level, we need to grab liquidity from higher points. This could mean two things. If the upward push keeps going, if we can still continue to push for more upwards, let's go into 4 hours maybe. If the upward push keeps going, we might see price adjust higher. So we need to reclaim this around 70,000, 70,700. If we can't hold this, very likely, we're going to continue to drop back to about high-ish of 63,000. So no one knows what's going to happen, but we just have to keep on looking out the trends to see what's happening. But at least from the perspective of looking at what's happening last time, right? If we do get back into this zone, right? Maybe last year is playing out again. This tends to be pretty good support, and I mean, this is kind of like support, right, for now, this line. But more importantly, we need to get past the upper line, the upper of this rectangular box. That's currently a resistance, right? And for us to actually get through this resistance, it took us well over 8 months, 9 months to get there. March to about November, and even for the last cycle, right, for us to touch the 200 weeks moving average. So the last cycle top was around November, very very similar timing as this cycle, right? And for us to get to the bottom, well, not yet the bottom, but at least the 200 weeks moving average, it took us about 6 months, 7 months, yeah, about 6 months, half a year to get there. And then for it to get to the bottom, it took approximately 1 year, 1 full year, right? So this time round, obviously, it took less, about 17 weeks. So that's why I'm still thinking we may, we're not at the bottom yet, right? Keeping up with the news to see who else capitulated, but no one yet, to be frank, right? So there are a lot of saying that, you know what, if we looking at the RSI relative strength index, people are actually calling the bottom right now, right? Because of this massive 60,000 dip a few days ago, right, on a Saturday. People are actually saying that this is the dip, okay? This marks the bottom because RSI, this is like the lowest level in comparison to, all of the Bitcoin bottom. So if we kind of look through like a monthly chart, right? So indeed, Bitcoin hit the very bottom, okay, in terms of RSI, relative strength index. However, I still felt, you know what, it hasn't actually quite gotten to the bottom yet in comparison to 2002 bottom, right? So indeed, for 2002, so this was like the last cycle, it took us quite some time, right? So RSI bottom around 1st of June. That kind of lasted until December 1st, right? That kind of marks another bottom. So it has been at that level for quite some time, right? So this is why I kind of felt, yes, it has marked the bottom, maybe, right? Or the fact that maybe we still have multi-months with low RSI, that essentially Bitcoin will be doing what it's doing right now. That's simply just consolidating, chop-solidating for a good few months, right? So maybe that could be it, right? At least for the last cycle, took 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, about 6, 7 months before it kind of recovers back, right? So that can potentially play out, right? So that's why I'm kind of saying that unless the trends tells us that, we are fully at the bottom, and that's even confirmed by a lot more capitulation, I wouldn't immediately kind of FOMO in just yet. But I can be wrong, guys, which, by the way, I'm always wrong. So not financial advice. Always do your own research. Okay, so take a quick look in terms of fear and greed index. We are in extreme fear. We're not getting out of it. Chat doesn't work because it's too fearful. Extreme fear, yeah, for the past week. Extreme fear, we'll have more extreme fear days. At least, guys, just be with me, guys. At least for another 3 to 6 months, right? So I think, yesterday we did look at some possible kind of scenario. Rather than us reaching the bottom in November, right? Maybe we could reach the bottom sometime in June. Okay, so that would be kind of like I think that would be a pretty bullish case. We reach the bottom sometime in June, and then immediately, we kind of realign back into, the the equity market, because equity market historically during midterms they tend to do much better towards Q4 during midterms, right? That's when Trump gives a lot of stimulus check, a lot of promises, and then the market will be on fuel. Everything pumps except for Bitcoin, because historically every midterm year, it tends to be a bear market, and Bitcoin tends not to pump until the following year, right? So usually equity needs to kind of flows in. They make a lot of money in equity, stocks and shares, and then eventually some of that money rotates into Bitcoin towards end of Q4. So that's why leading onto Bitcoin pump the following year, right? So somehow I kind of felt maybe this time around Bitcoin will kind of go alongside with equity, rather than Bitcoin bottom this year in November. Maybe it starts to bottom sometime in June, right? So that's just my speculation. Let me know in the comment section what do you guys think, right? Do you guys think we'll bottom sometime in June, or do you guys totally think that this is like the bottom, guys, right? Because RSI wise, it's at the bottom, right? But mind you, I mean, looking at this, right? Looking at this, the last cycle, right? The RSI is pretty low, okay? And I'm not saying that this is like the low, right? Potentially can even go lower. So let me know what you guys think. Is the 60K the bottom? Or we'll get to the bottom sometime in June? Or the third option, will we get to the bottom sometime in November? Like what Bitcoin historical, all the history did, where it takes about 12 to 15 months to get to the bottom, right? So let me know in the comments section. I'm keen to hear from you guys. In terms of ETF, how's ETF doing? ETF 9th of February, yesterday, Monday, it was a strong inflow of $144 million. Okay, so compared to last Friday, last Friday was actually pretty decent. So does it mean people are treating Bitcoin 60,000 as the bottom, right? The retail ETF holders are all coming back. So although it has been positive inflow, but that was largely due to Grayscale, right? Whereas BlackRock was actually selling. So mainly outflows with BlackRock yesterday. So far for a monthly basis, ETF for the months of February, it's slightly an improvement, I would say. I mean, although we're not even half the month yet. So I'm kind of guessing, we won't speculate until further, like maybe a month, towards the end of month. So we'll find out. What about others? Ethereum ETF, it was actually positive inflow, $57 million inflow. Again, BlackRock was the main one selling. Grayscale was the one that's buying in. So if we look through monthly chart for Ethereum ETF, you know what? These are kind of like better looking chart, right? So November, heaps of selling, followed by December, heaps of outflow, and then January, reduced outflow. I think people might be thinking that, you know what, bear market is almost over, and then, yeah, I think we can't talk too much about February yet. So we'll see. We'll see whether it turns slightly positive, more inflow for February. Hoping for February inflow, actually, for Ethereum. As well as Solana. Solana is doing okay-ish. $1.3 million worth of outflow from Grayscale, with Bitwise 1.3 million worth of inflow, right? So nothing much to talk about for Solana, except, they still seem to be pretty strong, okay? Except for this 2 weeks. So last week was negative, followed by negative the week before. I think this week, maybe we'll have some positive from Solana, because it's very undersold, by the way, okay? So we'll see. We'll see how it goes with ETF. At least it's not making its way to headline again, like billions of sell-off on ETF, right? At least I'm not seeing too much headline. So I think overall, the Bitcoin dip over the weekend could be a positive one, in a way that it's indicating to others, to some individual, that the bottom is in for Bitcoin, and then now would be the time to accumulate. However, looking at history, I still do believe that there could potentially be more bottom. However, it could possibly just be, 15-20% drop, as opposed to, another 30 or 40%. Okay, so that's something to look out for. Okay, so let's now move on to news that moves Bitcoin price section. Okay, so there are some upcoming this week's US CPI data could shake things up, right? So CPI data, reminder, it ties in with inflation, right? So background, CPI means Consumer Price Index. I think it's coming out on Friday. So something definitely to look out for, guys. Okay, so CPI, Consumer Price Index, which tracks how much prices for things like food, gas, rent, and of course, I'm sure you guys felt it, right? It's going up big time. Basically, through this CPI, it gives, some sort of indicator to measure inflation in everyday's life. Okay, I know in the trueflation, inflation level, it's actually very, very much controlled now. However, the Fed's data, the US Fed data, seems to be a bit lagging, or how do I explain it? Not truth, right? So that's why up until now we still haven't received much rate cuts. But anyway, the US government, the Fed, puts out this number every month, and for January 2026, it comes out on February the 13th. People expect it to show a small rise of 0.3% from last month and 2.5% from a year ago. So if the real number is higher, it means inflation is heating up more than we thought. If lower, it's cooling down. So this data is from the economic calendar, of course. Now looking back, so that's something to look forward to. We'll see how that goes. I think we'll see some Bitcoin movement as soon as this data hits the market. Okay, but of course, if we look back, recent job numbers have been pretty weak, right? So I think there will be some sort of an employment report that's coming out today and tomorrow, right? So initial job losses claims for the week ending January the 31st, 2026 jumped to 231,000, which was way higher than expected, of 212,000, and up from 2008 9,000 the week before. So that shows more people filing up unemployment. So a kind of like a sign the job market is softening. So that's not good. I mean, not good if for people being unemployed, but I think this number will be good for asset holder like us, right? And of course, job openings in December 2025 dropped to 6.5 million, below the forecast of 7.1 million. And private jobs ads in January 2026 were only 22,000 according to ADP, missing the 45,000 estimate. So the unemployment rate for December 2025 was 4.4%, a tiny drop from 4.5%, but still higher than ideal. So coming up on February the 11th is the full January job report, expected to show just 55,000 new jobs and unemployment staying at 4.4%. So if these keep coming in weak, like higher unemployment or fewer jobs, it could push the Fed, the Federal Reserve, who controls interest rate, to think about cutting rates in the March period, which will take place sometime between 17th of 18th of March, the FOMC meeting. So lower rates make borrowing cheaper, which can boost the economy and definitely help the risk asset like Bitcoin. So something to look forward to. My point of view, yes, more weak data on top of what's already out there would likely make the Fed consider the rate cut in March to support jobs and growth, especially if CPI comes in low, showing inflation isn't a big worry. So short term, I think bullish if CPI is below forecast, like cool inflation, weaker jobs, rate cuts hopes, right? However, be pretty bearish if above what I've just mentioned, like hot inflation. So that inflation data comes out on Friday. That means, steady rate, high rates. So longer term, I think it's all bullish because, we got a new Fed coming in May. I'm not sure whether Trump likes this Fed. But anyway, he appointed this Fed. So I'm hoping that this new Kevin Walsh guy will just help us with some of that, that rate cut. I don't think he'll do much quantitative easing, money printing yet, but we'll see. We'll see how it all goes. Anyway, let's move on to other news that can potentially affect the Bitcoin price. Okay, so let's move on to this one. White House crypto market structure meeting. It's today. So White House meeting could unfreeze the Crypto Clarity Act this week, but crypto rewards likely to be the price. Okay. Is that a good thing or bad thing? I don't know, man. Because imagine, like, you storing your stable coin and then you get a much reduced reward for that. That's a pretty bad thing, I don't know. Because for asset holder, like, you hold Bitcoin, right? Maybe this could be your first run. You'd be like, just get over it, guys. Just get over it and sign the damn thing, President Trump, right? However, signing this would be giving your future away, because by the time you want to sell off your Bitcoin, you're going to miss out on all of the interest that you can get from your from your stable coin. But would you still care about it? Because maybe your Bitcoin would gives you 3x, 4x, or 5x gain. You'd be like, nah, I don't need that 3%, 5% annual kind of reward, stablecoin reward. I don't know. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comment section. What do you prefer? Right? Because signing this can potentially get us back that bull run that we might have missed, right? So again, for viewers that are new to the channel, background. So today, February the 10th, right? That's like in a couple of hours' time. The White House is holding a second big meeting with top bosses from banks, crypto companies like Coinbase, and certain trade groups. So this follows a first meeting on February the 2nd where, they spoke about new laws called the Clarity Act, which is a bill to set rules for how crypto markets work. Like who regulates what and how stablecoins, those are crypto's pegged dollar bill, right? But on-chain, digital, and can pay rewards or interest to holders. So in the first meeting, obviously, banks and crypto folks couldn't agree whether stablecoin users could, get yields, like earning a bit extra for holding stablecoins, right? So it really does matter because by the time when you want to sell off your Bitcoin, you want to continue to earn something from your stablecoin, right? You don't want it just to sit there. It's always nice to earn something from your stablecoin, so you're not immediately eating into your principles, right? So that's the whole deal, right? And of course, banks are worried because why? Because imagine if stablecoin yields give you 5% or 6%, and then banks only somehow giving you 1.5% for interest. Then, of course, we're going to see a sudden influx of people rather, don't want to put money into banks anymore. They just put it onto exchanges. They might not, it doesn't mean they'll be buying Bitcoin or Ethereum, by the way, right? However, it does mean, they would be rather treating an exchange as like Coinbase as a bank as opposed to a traditional bank like the JP Morgan, Chase, the HSBC, the NatWest, right? Or the Barclays in the UK. So this is why I think it really does matter because imagine the number of people that come to understand that they're being shafted by the big banks. And then it makes complete sense for them to bank elsewhere. So nowadays we're seeing a lot of new form of banks being formed, right? Oh, so by the way, even Mr. Beast is considering buying a bank now, right? So this is where the money are, the new money gets made, right? Because traditional bank, with all of these laws and regulation are preventing new players from cropping up. And then potentially with such a thing that gets approved, eventually, all of these new banks will crop up. And the kind of new banks that I like to bank with right now, it's something like Revolut, it makes the whole traditional banking and management of your savings and crypto so much more seamless. So I do actually look forward to once the Clarity gets approved and then other countries like the UK and the Europe kind of follow suit, that will, accelerate the adoption so much more quicker. But we'll see how that goes. But anyway, the White House just wants them to sort this out by end of February, right? So the meeting might push for a deal today, okay? However, just want to manage everyone's expectation. Very likely it's probably another nothing burger, right? And if no agreement, the bill could stall in Congress for you guys. Just to be aware, market structure means the basic setup of how buying, selling, and regulating crypto happens, like making it safer and clearer for everyone, right? So you don't want that to be stuck at the Congress level. We want that to be, to get to Trump for signature ASAP. So this could be bullish if they agree and bill pass, bringing more clarity and big money into crypto, but bearish if it bans yields on stablecoin, as that might make the whole bill so much more less attractive and hurt the user's interest, like my interest, your interest. I mean, not my interest. I'm not American, but my viewers, most of you are American. I think these are something that many of you are looking forward to. Okay, so somehow I think the news short term it's bullish because it kind of brings back conversation about Bitcoin and crypto for the US government again. Like, thank you Trump, thank you President Trump for driving the outcome of this and making sure that people are making decision a lot faster. And of course it reduces a lot of uncertainty, okay? But I'm kind of looking at this from a more bearish angle because there will be a lot of deadlocks. Deadlocks continues, or potentially stablecoin yield bans, okay? As stablecoin are a big entry point for a lot of new users. So short-term wise, I think, it depends how you kind of looking at this. Whenever I do this, you guys probably thinking about 6-7 now, right? But anyway, it's kind of having that feeling a little bit, 6-7 feeling, right? Anyway, other interesting news section. Let's move on to. Okay, there's actually a lot of people saying US government are buying Bitcoin. I think a lot of it came from this guy, this chap, Jim Cramer. So,
do you think that the president is going to fill the Bitcoin reserve?
I don't know. That will
Well, that's
be
what I
a
heard at
big
60.
deal.
I heard at 60 he's going to fill the Bitcoin reserve. You better cover.
This is the level.
Meantime, whether it's Bitcoin, strategy, even Palantir, Jim, the notion of a Democratic House, and according to Axios this morning, maybe a Democratic Senate. What happens if policy starts becoming a headwind, not a tailwind?
Well, look, it could happen. I just think that what's amazing to me is that the people, the Robinhood people.
Anyway, there's a buzz going about the U.S. government creating, Bitcoin reserve, and the last dip of 60,000. There was a lot of speculation. I think it must only be Jim Cramer starting these rumors. So that's why a lot of people are saying that, hey, U.S. government was buying Bitcoin at 60,000. But guys, these are all rumors, okay? Then these are all just rumors. So U.S. government, they're not buying Bitcoin, okay? So that's the bearish news of today. Let's bring you some hopium. I know a lot of us love hopium. So a whale withdraw big from Binance. So whales, OG maybe. Whales are big investor with lots of crypto and Bitcoin. So their moves can sway prices because they buy or sell in huge volume. So yesterday on the 9th of February, 2 new wallets pull out about 3,500 Bitcoin, worth around 249 million, and 30,000 Ethereum, worth about 63 million from Binance. And where did they move to, right? They actually move it onto another wallet, very likely a private storage. Okay, so here we go, right? So hopefully people will think bottom is in. I want to think bottom is in too. I know you guys love to think that bottom is in, but we all know that Bitcoin takes about 12 to 15 months to get to the bottom, and we only like 4 months through. The best thing, right? The best time to buy Bitcoin is actually right now during this year, right? Because it's the year that Bitcoin gets to the bottom. It's the year that's usually pretty bearish for Bitcoin. So this is like the year to buy Bitcoin. And I hope many of you will not leave, because you don't want to come back and look at your portfolio and notice that, damn, I have made improvements on my portfolio, but I never kind of dollar cost average in to bring down my average, right? You don't want to be that person like me, a couple of years, like my first 2 cycle, I came back very, very late in the cycle when we're at the top again and never quite DCA in. So I did a lot better this cycle. So here you go. Life experience explained to you. And I hope many of you guys get that. Okay, so whales are buying, whales are stacking, Safu fund, Binance Safu funds are buying and stacking. Sailor actually bought yesterday too. I never quite covered that. Michael Saylor's strategy also bought. I certainly don't think the bottom is in. However, the best thing that, at least for us to do this year, is to DCA as much as possible, right? If you don't like to time and buy the DCA bottom, just set up a weekly or daily or monthly kind of buy, so that you take out the emotion. Just let it all done automatically. Okay, so that's it for today, guys. I hope you like the content. Let me know in the comment section. Drop a like, hit subscribe. Let me know in the comment section where you guys are watching from. It's always nice to hear from every one of you. Okay, thanks guys. Bye. Bye.